what we had to contribute to really create a living democracy of what we felt we wanted to create for others behind us. And so to me, that seeded a life of service, really. That's how I interpreted it. And I am here as the CEO of Consumer Reports. It is the largest consumer organization in the world.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Latina Leadership Series. My name is Angelica Casares, and I am your host. On today's episode, I'll let you introduce yourself. Who are you, and what do you do?
Wow, I love that. Angelica, it's such a pleasure to be here. And because of your show, I'm going to say my full name and be proud of it. I am Marta Lourdes Tellado. And as you know, many of us are often named after another powerful woman. I am named after my mother, who was a lesson if not then who. So when I saw the
Mhm,
title of the show, I thought,
mhm,
wow. Um, I like many of us Latinas, I have an origin story
mhm.
that has been really probably one of my strengths. I think
Okay.
it's so powerful because we live in two worlds.
Mhm,
My story started when I was 2 years old, and that was my first lesson in courage. Because when I was two, I was packed in a car with my three brothers and my parents,
mhm,
and my parents rolled the car down the street um, before daylight without turning on
mhm,
the ignition, so my neighbors would not know we were leaving Havana, Cuba, after a revolution. They
mhm,
were disappointed that the revolution didn't result in some of the equity and opportunity they were seeking, and also freedom and democratic
mhm.
values. But they chose a different life for us. So what a tremendous sacrifice to as two young parents with four kids under 6 years old. And that was my first lesson in courage. But it was
Mhm,
also, it seeded my own ambitions. Really, it became the first chapter of my story, and
mhm,
came to the U.S. and grew up listening constantly, dinner conversations about, our own democratic freedoms, what we had to do, our obligations to it, what we had to contribute to really create a living democracy of what we felt we wanted to create for others behind us. And so to me, that seeded a life of service, really. That's how I interpreted it. And I am here as the CEO of Consumer Reports. It is the largest consumer organization in the world. And I always love saying that because the marketplace is where we go, all of us go to realize our ambitions. And I believe that the marketplace needs to be fair and transparent and just, so that we
mhm.
can realize our ambitions and our aspirations. And that's been the path, and where I spend most of my time right now, fighting that fight.
Yeah. So before we go into the my relationship with Consumer Reports and exactly why you're here and the book that you wrote, I want to go back a little bit back to your beginnings. So you talked about the lights being off. So the neighbors didn't know that you guys were leaving, and you have an immigrant story. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my immigrant story is, boy, at 2 years old, we find ourselves here, and we all have immigrant stories. Some of our immigrant stories have to do with economic opportunity. Some of our immigrant stories have to do with political freedoms. Some of our immigrant stories have to do with human rights,
Hmm.
and the search for justice and fairness. We touch so many of our immigrant stories touch all of that. And so coming here, you get exposed to what it's like to start over again. And you see in your parents sort of the rebuilding of economic opportunity and emotional strength. And often you feel very alone, and you feel like, who can you trust? What can you do? And as a young child, you pick up the language faster than they do, and
Hmm.
you become like a translator.
The
You're in
expert
the
in the language. Yeah.
you're the expert. You're in the doctor's office answering questions, doing things. And so, when I thought about writing this book, Buyer Aware, it was two things. It was a way to provide a consumer power playbook for the
Hmm.
everyday consequential decisions you make in your life. But
Okay.
it also tells a larger story, I think, that I wanted to tell about democracy. That I think our democracy can only flourish if we have a marketplace that is also fair and just. And that's the larger story of the book.
Okay. So my relationship with Consumer Reports happened years ago when I first introduced them to. So my husband started off as a journalist. We started doing blogging 10 years ago before it was cool. And that led us down the path of actually introducing ourselves to Consumer Reports down at some conference. And then we had a working relationship years ago. But then recently, I did come up on Elena, and she told me about you. And she told me about all the amazing things that you're actually doing there for Consumer Reports. So I'm going to guess, and I'm probably going to guess right. Are you the first Latina in your position there at Consumer Reports?
Yes,
Hmm.
I am the first Latina CEO.
Hmm.
And so when I came to the organization, as you know, the marketplace is very different than when we were
Uh-huh.
founded in 1936.
Hmm.
The marketplace needs to reach, and our advice and our tools need to reach way beyond what our founders may have thought that marketplace looked like. And so many of the things, and Elena was a real trailblazer in this regard, many of the things that I have tried to do is to grow our audience, expand it. One of the most fun things we did was we had a bilingual television show called
Hmm.
Consumer 101, and it was on both Telemundo and on NBC for 2 years. And so I had a bilingual host for the first time. It's remarkable, but there's no end to what we can do and what we must do, and our responsibility to reach our audience.
Hmm. So you write this book, and it's in regards a lot to sort of your upbringing and what you see what the marketplace looks like. Can you give me a little bit of how that translated from where you come from into the book and what the marketplace looks like now?
Yeah, well, we landed in Newark, New Jersey in the
Hmm.
1960s. And we thought we were leaving a revolution and coming into stability. And we landed in the
Mm,
US during the civil rights movement, during the women's movement,
yeah.
during the peace movement.
Hmm.
But what a time to come and observe from our third story walk up, where we were there with my grandparents, myself. We were in bunk beds in the dining room. We were doing
Hmm.
piecework at night in front of the television. We thought all kids did that. And that was my lens. That was my lens to what was happening in the world. And as I said, I think it played an enormous role. But what you do also see growing up is you start to see the cracks in some of the things that provide opportunity
Hmm.
for families. And for us, we finally gathered enough resources to buy our first home.
Hmm.
And you learn very quickly about redlining. You
Hmm.
learn what it's like to get a mortgage if you're Black and brown. You learn what
Yeah.
kind of neighborhoods. And also, you learn that the moment you stepped into this new home, it starts losing value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not a problem we have completely erased from our economy yet, right? We're still struggling with discrimination in the marketplace. So a lot of those issues really called me and called my attention, and empowering consumers with the tools they need, everyday decisions, large consequential decisions, to make smart decisions that begin to grow their wealth and grow their power
Hmm.
is something I'm very passionate about. And of course, it's the fundamental purpose of Consumer Reports.
My next question is this. I'm interested in the book. What would be the reason that you would say that you could take away from the book that you wrote? What would, as the writer, want me, the reader, to take away from it?
Well, the headline, I would say, is that while we have, for the past 86 years, succeeded as an organization in creating consumer rights and consumer protections for all consumers, that we are now in a very different marketplace.
Hmm.
We have crossed into the realm of a digital marketplace where
Yes.
many of those protections and rights do not translate into the digital world. And I could explain what I mean by that. But what that suggests is that our consumer power, we are losing it. It is shifting away from us. And we have to double down. And I would just close by saying it doesn't have to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
We have to shift the market to work for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just give you some examples. We many of the issues that we struggled with and succeeded in, that folks don't know about is, the cars have seatbelts today because of what we did. They have backup cameras because we compelled agencies to put those tools standard, not luxury. Life-saving technology shouldn't be a luxury for those who can afford it. And now we have a marketplace where some of the harms are hidden from us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We go onto platforms, we download apps.
Mm-hmm.
The business model is about collecting information, tracking
Mm-hmm.
you, getting your geolocation. You have become a commodity, not a
You're right.
consumer. We never really agreed to that business model, right? And so what the book really helps with, I think, is telling you what you can do to secure
Mm-hmm.
yourself in a digital world, but what we can do collectively to
Mm-hmm.
create the protections and the rights we need to really thrive. Because revolutionary technology is something I embrace. We need revolutionary technology, but I believe that revolutionary technology can also be responsible technology.
Absolutely. One of the conversations that we definitely have been having, especially here in Houston, is that digital divide. And sometimes we outweigh the pros and the cons. In order for us to have access to internet, we kind of just accept what it is, right? In order to get access to, and we've seen that during the pandemic, where kids were getting as close as possible to schools or anywhere that they were getting free Wi-Fi. Free Wi-Fi means that you're definitely much more exposed to a lot more, right? Your information is definitely being tallied even more as that happens. But the idea that we outweigh the consequences of that because we have to have it. Um,
Well,
Privacy is a big issue. Yeah.
it is, and look, I think all of us love our connected devices and our
Hmm.
connected phones. And one of the things about the Latino community is that we're early adopters.
Yeah.
We are very mobile first, a very
Yeah.
mobile first community.
Absolutely.
We know how to take advantage of these incredible devices, but the cost of convenience should
Hmm.
not be lack of transparency, as well as data privacy and security. And I'll tell you, one of the things we all love to use is peer-to-peer payment apps, right?
Hmm.
If you have to send your child $200 in college, or you have to send your aunt or uncle some money, Venmo, Zelle,
Cash App.
we
Yeah.
Cash App, we use them
Yeah.
all. Here's the thing you need to know about that many of the traditional rights and the protections that you have in the traditional banking world do not
Hmm.
apply to this world. And what that means is if you happen to send money to the
Hmm.
wrong person,
Hmm.
there is no guarantee you will be made whole. There's no
Oh.
law that protects you in that regard. So that's what is striking about the digital world. So many of the protections that we have,
Hmm.
that we were used to, do not translate into this world, and that's what we need to secure. And I'll share another example, and that's an app and a tool, because sometimes the companies do the right thing. And when we approached GoodRx is an app that compares prescription drug prices,
Yeah.
and many
We
and
all use it.
we all use it. And
Yeah.
what we know is that not all of our healthcare insurance covers the full cost of prescription drugs. And so you
You're
want to
right.
know where the cheapest is. But what we discovered was they were also sharing very personal data about
Oh.
your medications and connecting it to the people using that app. Now, you might say, wait a minute, don't we have a law against sharing our medical information? Well, we do. It's called HIPAA, but it doesn't apply to the
It
digital
doesn't
realm.
apply.
No.
That doesn't apply to digital world. It doesn't to
It
privacy.
doesn't.
No.
So we called them on it, and they did the right thing.
Okay.
They cleaned it up and they do it. But what we need is to codify those standards and rules so that other apps that are leaking our personal
Yeah.
information, that doesn't happen. But those are the kinds of trips and traps that I try
Uh-huh.
to, create more awareness about so that we can protect
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that at all. One of the things that one of the things that has been kind of in my ear a lot is these digital banks, right? So you get a lot of like investment or return if you put save money into your their savings, and there's a lot more percentage that you get back. But I didn't think about my privacy with those digital banks, right? No longer brick and mortar or like the way to go, and people like banking online. I That's the only time I ever think about privacy, but I never thought about my health. Like those little traps that I don't know that they existed. Um,
Well, yes, and I think the reality is that we can exist in a digital world where we have more rights and protections, and that's
mhm,
the one we need to build, and that's the one that we're really fighting for. So, in the interim, though, like, you have to function in this world. And so, one of the
yeah.
things we provide, and I hope that your listeners take advantage of, we have what we call a security planner that's free on our website, cr.org, security planner. And it walks you through how to secure and create more protection for yourself on all your devices. So I recommend everyone go to that
Mhm,
and just walk through it. And because it's going to take uh, all of us to
mhm,
make this right on a systemic level, but you can go there today and start to take action yourself in creating more privacy and security, and securing some of your devices from hacking as well. Your television,
yeah.
your router. It's
It's insane. It's probably why our Wi-Fi is slow because probably one of our neighbors got the. I don't know. It's probably why. I hope not. I think we do a lot of at least we try to do a lot of protection around our house and our Wi-Fi and our routers and our TVs and items like that. That's
but
only
here
simply
and
because we do.
And
Go ahead.
and and Helica, this is the thing that's so frustrating about it, is why is the burden on us?
I know.
Since why is it that our privacy has become a setting on a device instead of a right?
Yes, yes. I thought I had opted out. Even simple things like Instagram. It's up to like actual Instagrammers to let you know that Instagram is now doing the same thing it did 10 years ago, where it was blocking exactly where your location was at when you were taking pictures and posting them. And I guess there was a glitch and somebody came back and I was like, "Wait, I thought that was a problem. Like I thought we were over that." That wasn't
Yes.
gonna come, like, about again, and you're right, it's on us to go back in and modify it and start turning, toggles off to make sure that we're not being tracked.
Yeah,
Um
and that's because all of that information, it is what is fueling what are a set of monopoly platforms, and they're advertising platforms, right? If you think about Google, they made $147 billion last year, and if you add YouTube, because they own that too, that's 200 billion in advertising revenue. That's a lot of advertising revenue, and you have to understand, when you go on Google and do a search, more
Mhm,
often than not, the results you get pay for themselves,
mhm,
because you pay to be number one when you make that search. And so, if you want to find a result that's not an ad, you have to scroll down, and they know that you are not going to scroll down, that you're going to go right to that first screen. So
yeah,
these are the
yeah, you're
kinds of
right.
things one has to be conscious of.
Yeah, I didn't
I,
you're talking about a lot of things that I don't think about. They're just so
well,
automatic.
when I was a kid, and we used to get in the car and visit my relatives here and there. We'd be in the car and we'd look outside, and I used to love looking at those big billboards with all that advertising, right? It was
Uh-huh,
amazing when we were kids. Well, think about it. You would see those billboards and you drive past them, and they were gone from your mind.
mhm,
Today, think of the digital world where that billboard, you see it, but it follows you home.
mhm.
It follows you to the doctor.
It does.
It stays with you wherever you go, and that's something just to kind of keep that mental picture in your mind.
Oh my goodness. I never thought of okay, you got me. I think I am gonna take a read on this and start letting the Latinas on here know that hey, this is kind of a thing that you should probably be very much aware of.
Well,
Um,
Angelica, for women, it's particularly important because we know that the geolocation
mhm,
function is for
mm,
women who are subject to stalking and harassing.
yeah,
It's very important for our own security to be aware of the capacity of geolocation tracking on your devices.
absolutely. So okay, one of the things that I do like to do here on the Latina Leadership Series is ask how because I have a lot of women who are interested, and sometimes some of the women that are listening on here, they're either in their second stage of like life, right, to say the least, is where their career has changed a little bit, and they're projecting something differently, or they're taking an entrepreneurship like place in their life, or this is their second round after they have kids. They're going back into the workforce. What sort of advice would you give these women if they are trying to because you are the CEO of Consumer Reports, and everybody knows who Consumer Reports is. If you don't, you're living under a rock. But so, what kind of advice would you give these Latinas?
Well, first, I always love it when people introduce me and it's, oh, I'm the CEO
Mm-hmm.
of Consumer Reports, but my story started with, I'm a Latina girl who lived in a third story walk up,
Uh-huh.
and I'm a first gen college graduate,
Okay.
and what that tells me is that um, we have so much untapped potential.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love the title of your show. If not us, then who?
Mm-hmm.
I had role models. I My mother showed me that she got here and she took 3 buses to get to work. Didn't understand, but if not her, then who? She had to support us. She went out and did what she had to do, and it was remarkable. But it told me and it gave me the self confidence that
Mm-hmm.
if not who, then I can do that. And we live in a society where there's so many signals that
Mm-hmm.
say not you, somebody
Mm-hmm.
else, not you,
Mm-hmm.
him.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
We have a lot to push back on, and
Mm-hmm.
I say believe in yourself,
Okay.
trust your instincts,
Oh.
be continue to be curious in your life. I had no idea what I wanted to do even in high school. I was an underachiever. I would say I was a bit lost. I needed some mentorship. I needed My parents had not gone to college. I needed who do you turn to for advice, and I was fortunate. You either have an older sibling or you have a teacher that
Mm-hmm.
takes, or you have another woman who takes you under her wing. But you have to believe in yourself and take chances. There's no such thing as failure. There's just learning
Yeah.
and refueling and taking the next step and doing something else. The more you do, the more you learn about yourself and uncover things you didn't know about yourself.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I wanted to say a
Please.
little bit more
Yes.
about, I
Yes.
wanted to say, as the CEO of Consumer Reports,
Uh-huh.
and as someone who's been really devoted to public service and philanthropy, it's a really unique organization because we're a social enterprise, and that means that we're a nonprofit. All
Yeah.
the And we're fully supported by our members, and we've
Mm-hmm.
never taken advertising, and so all of the things we do are really in service to empowering consumers. The information, the investigative stories,
Mm-hmm.
all of the testing, and that makes us just so unique. And I really would love to just invite all of your listeners to come and explore who we are and how we can be helpful to them in their lives. It's so important for us to not only make smart decisions as individuals, but to
Mm-hmm.
really understand what our collective power can do. I've seen it firsthand when I go and I talk about our 6 million members
Mm-hmm.
and what we're able to achieve in terms of product safety, in terms of safety in cars, and
Mm-hmm.
providing, because what we really want and what we're really striving for is we can have a marketplace that is fair and just. We can have
Mm-hmm.
privacy by design. We can have fairness by design. We can have tools that work for every community. And the most important thing is we can have an economy that puts consumers first. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always what we strive for. And I think we can get there as a community and as a collective force. And I've seen what it can do. And so I hope that this message reaches your listeners in a
I
powerful way.
I hope so too. One of the things that I definitely talk on here a lot of is about data. And so when I Consumer Reports, yes, I was introduced a couple of years ago, but that was on this platform. That was on this kind of sort of wavelength. Years ago, I used to buy the magazine, and I used to have a stack of Consumer Reports magazines. This is the way I bought. I did a lot of buying of my child's like car seats based on Consumer Reports, based on like I I was aware of what to look for in actual products to know what I was trying to get and try to get the best what I could potentially afford. Unfortunately, you're limited to what you can afford. And so, yes, I'm big on data. I'm big on like what you. So then I have a question now that you brought this up. I have a question. What part of that website, if you could like recommend to our listeners and knowing my audience, what part of that website would you say that they go visit?
Well, I would say first and foremost, given some of the things we've talked about today around security and privacy, go to the
Hmm.
free security planner and take your first step of empowerment and take
Okay.
back some control over your data and your
Hmm.
personal identity. That is what is at risk. So I would love for you to
Hmm.
do that. And the
Okay.
second thing is that spread the word. Tell people
Hmm.
in your community that not only do we have consumer reports online, but we also have a Spanish language version. If you have folks in your community that, as we all do, we're comfortable in both, and that's a
Hmm.
superpower that we have. And I also want to hear from you. I would love to hear from the community. What else do you need? How can we be helpful to you? How can we be of service? What are the ways in which you're experiencing the marketplace? We have ways for you to communicate. We have a tell me your story
Uh-huh.
section as well. I
Uh-huh.
want to hear from your listeners. I want to hear from the community. What else
Yeah.
can you need? How can we be helpful?
Don't tempt me, Marta, because I'm gonna do a focus group and ask them what is it that you want to consumer, knowing what Consumer Reports provides and the kind of like research they do. Is there something that's missing that you definitely want to know, and how can they approach you? How can they give you the information that you're actually looking for, and that
Yes.
they're not just doing research in vain. You know,
Well,
it
and
is.
the other,
It's.
yes, and the other thing too is we have a microsite for the book,
Mhm.
and go to buyerware. .cr.org, and you will see a variety of different issue areas if you want to be a part of some of the actions that we take on some of these issues,
Oh.
on broadband, on others. We have to grow our community of action to
Uh-huh.
make change happen. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of opportunities for you to take part in that.
Oh. Okay.
We
I
have to
think I
raise our
am gonna take
voices.
you up on that. Absolutely. I think so. I think there's definitely a way to sit to actually do it. I do understand that. I know the Houston and Texas market definitely like just it varies and it shifts from time to time based on the way the wind blows sometimes. That's how what we know what we need. But yeah, I think that's awesome. That's cool. That's interesting to be able to partake in what you guys actually do and be part of that data that you guys are doing research on. That's amazing. Thank you so much for again for stopping me. Is there anything else
No,
that I
thank
maybe
you,
I missed that
Angelica.
you'd like to include?
No, thank you for having me. It was a great
Okay.
conversation.